Georgetown native Denzon Windley, a political scientist and educator, is with us, and he's got an excellent history. He graduated from the University of South Carolina, and then he went to serve in the Peace Corps, and he's going to tell us about that experience, teaching in Sierra Leone. He's currently pursuing his master's degree at the University of Texas, Austin, and he'll discuss his kindred ties between low-country Gullah culture and what he witnessed in Sierra Leone, and how that shaped perspective not only on political and economic developments in emerging nations, but also here back home. So he's a young guy, but he's wise well beyond his years. And we're really grateful to have him. He was almost called away to Washington, D.C. He will start a job up there in the hub of things political, but he was, because of a COVID outbreak up there, he was kind of saved, so he could still do this in-person presentation for us today. So we're really thankful. But please welcome Denzon Windley today, Global Gullah, South Carolina to Sierra Leone.
Thank you. Good morning. We should be good. Well, again, my name is Denzon Windley from Georgetown, South Carolina, right up the road. I am very thankful that you all decided to come out this morning to hear about the presentation on my beloved Sierra Leone. In Sierra Leone, she is affectionately nicknamed Mama Salone. And so today, Dr. Dan read off what the presentation was going to be about. And I tried my best to not make it too academic, that's boring. You will have the country profile, but you will also have the comparisons that I noticed between my culture, the Gullah and of Sierra Leone. And as we get into the presentation, which I'm sure some of you may already know, there are strong ties for a reason, a particular reason that dates in history. And to go back to see it, in your face live, it was something special. And in fact, I went back to Sierra Leone this past summer for an internship with a local nonprofit. Well, it's a nonprofit based out of Minnesota, One Village Partners, a great organization that does work in collaborating. In the jargon that we use when we Americans, Westerners, go abroad in developing countries, we should not say that we're going there to save or to help. We're going there to collaborate, because unbeknownst to a lot of people in these countries, there's a lot of technical expertise. There's individuals who we look at indexes and we see that they may be poor or that corruption is rampant. But what we don't tell the story is that a lot of people there are just as motivated, just as educated, and they are ready to serve their country, right? So, again, I'm so happy to be here. Sierra Leone has truly become my adopted country, and I'm excited to show you what she's all about. So, Global Gullah, from South Carolina to Sierra Leone. As Dr. Dan said, after I finished my bachelor's in 2017, personally for me, there was just too much book stuff. I am an experiential learner. I like to be hands-on. So I told my advisor, I think I will join the Peace Corps. My mother was dead set against it. My mother's not someone who likes to travel outside the United States. But myself, I am all about risk. And so, the opportunity to go back to go to Africa, to explore the historical roots was too great. And so I'm glad I did. So special thanks to FOWL, the Georgia County Library System. They're not here, but the Rice Museum. I work for a spell in the Rice Museum, Mr. Jim Fitch, Ms. Vinnie Dees. They are wonderful people, Ms. Zenobia. They taught me a lot. They have great displays and presentations on Gullah Geechee culture. And most of all to my Sierra Leonean sisters and brothers who aided me tremendously and made my experience as beautiful as it was. I will not stand here and fib to you. I have another fellow RPCV in here. Where did she go? Ah, there you are, yes. She will also tell you Mr. Kohler that the Peace Corps isn't the most glamorous life in the world. We are not given extraordinary salaries. We are paid what a normal, in my case, teacher will be paid in Sierra Leone, but in fact I was paid more being at $230 per month, and a lot of teachers do not receive that in Sierra Leone, and I will explain later why. So I want to give a special shout out to these people here. This is my cohort of fellow volunteers. This is just the day we met the president of Sierra Leone, Dr. Julius Matabio. And a interesting history about Matabio, he lived in the United States for a spell, as nearly all African leaders tend to do. But in the 1990s, he led a coup, a counter coup against Mr. Strasser during the Sierra Leone Civil War. And so he did that to restore authority to civil authorities. But we'll get into the war very momentarily. But this was our day at the State House. They've been promising to take us to free time to meet government officials for a long time. In the Peace Corps, they would like for you to remain separate from anything political. We are not there as employees of the Department of State. We are not diplomats. We are there to serve the people alongside the people of Sierra Leone in ordinary capacities. But this day was an exception. That's my country director. You can't see him in the back, tall fellow Tony. He's from Niger. Wonderful human being. And really, these are my sisters and brothers. And we struggle and cry together on many occasions. I'll forever be grateful to them. So I wanted to do a quick video. It was something I made for a third grade class.
Hello, how are you doing, class? My name is Denzon, and I would like to welcome each and every one of you to beautiful Sierra Leone, or as we call her here, Mama Salone. Before I go any further, I would like to thank each and every one of you, especially Ms. Walsh, for giving me this chance to share my incredible journey here in Sierra Leone. A little about myself. Currently, I am a teacher with the United States Peace Corps, an organization that sends Americans all over the world to aid those in developing nations. Right now, I live in a town called Waccamaw. Try pronouncing that one, Waccamaw, where I will be for the next 2 years. Hey, would you all like to know a secret? I was sitting in your seat almost 15 years ago. I too was in Ms. Walsh's class. And here's another secret. If you work hard and you excel throughout Ms. Walsh's class, middle and high school, and especially college, you too can go out in the world and serve alongside others. Now that's enough about me. Allow me to tell you a little more about sweet Mama Salone. Sierra Leone is a very small nation in the region known as West Africa. Its population is about 6 million, so it is about the size of South Carolina. Here in Southern, it has many languages, but the main ones are Creole, English, and the regional dialects known as Mende or Latino. Here in Salone, there are a lot of young people. In fact, over 60% of the population is under the age of 25 years old. So that means young people, another interesting fact about Mama Salone is that it is very beautiful here. What's more, everything grows here. Oranges, pineapples, bananas, plantains. They even call cucumbers cucumbers. Now, on to a little about what I do here at Waccamaw. Currently, I am a teacher at Holy Ghost Secondary School. Here in Sierra Leone, secondary school is high school. Now, though I teach the older kids, here in Sierra Leone, both older and younger kids in middle school, what we call junior secondary school, attend classes in the same building. Here at Holy Ghost, we only have 27 classrooms, but there are over 1,000 students here. So as you can imagine, it gets pretty crowded really quick. Now, more about Shawarma. Shawarma is a town located in Kylon District. It has about 20,000 people. It's made up of many villages, so it's pretty huge. What you're viewing now is called the marketplace. Sierra Leone, like most African nations, do not have large supermarkets like Walmart or Piggly Wiggly. What you're viewing now is where people go every day to buy everyday needs, from food, toothpaste, soap, you name it. The section I live in is called Social Town. There's about 5,000 people, so I have plenty of company. Sierra Leone is not like America. We do not enjoy 24-hour electricity, running water, or cable. You do everything here by hand or manual labor. So while Sierra Leoneans don't enjoy 24-hour Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, they do have a lot of fun. Like here, with a peek in them are playing football. Football is a very popular sport here in Sierra Leone and Africa in general. Myself, I don't know how to play football, but the kids have promised you to teach me. Let's see how this turns out. So, that is all I have for now. How do you view Sierra Leone?
I never learned how to play football. I am very lazy, and I say that with a lot of derision, but it's true. I prefer to be behind someone's desk. But they tried to teach me, and being part of Sierra Leone culture, their natural instinct is to help folks. I've never been among a people so open. I lived among the French. French are very close people, so as you can tell, well, as you may know, switching between the different worlds is something else, and every time I do it, I appreciate Sierra Leoneans that much more. So, brief history on Mama Salone, this country of 7 million. Geographically, about the size of South Carolina. It's divided among 16 ethnic groups. The two largest being the Katimni and the Mende. Where you saw in the video in Shawarma, that's part of the eastern region of Sierra Leone, and that's where the Mendes dominate. The capital of Freetown, religion. The majority in the country are Muslims, practicing Muslims. There's a sizable Christian minority, but the key thing about Sierra Leone in international circles that people recognize, they are a largely peaceful people. The religions coexist. In my new job, I'm working on countries of Niger and Burkina Faso, where you will see there's much more religious strife. So it is a blessing that Sierra Leoneans have been. I just got to turn it down a little bit. So sorry. Okay. It's a blessing that they've been able to maintain such social cohesion throughout the system. The largest cities are again Freetown, Bo, Kenema, McKinney, Lansar. And this is what I was getting at. In 1991 to 2002, there was the Sierra Leonean Civil War. Now down there I have that it was not ethnic based, but that's partially not true. So what happened, there was this political party called the APC, and they ruled Sierra Leone since independence in 1960. So naturally people get tired of one party domination. What happened, there was this insurgency group that was funded by Muammar Gaddafi of Libya and Charles Taylor in neighboring Liberia. So they led an insurgency in the country, killing thousands, terrorizing the population. So the war did not start off as an ethnic conflict. With the APC, they were associated with the Katimni group, ethnic group, and the Mendes are most of the SLPP, which we'll talk about in this slide. But that war started because they wanted to get rid of the government in place. We need a country full of natural resources, again, which we'll get into. You encounter all kinds of problems like that. So it ravaged that country for over 10 years, peace on and off, 2 coups. I told you about Matt Abio. He actually orchestrated a counter coup so that he could return authority to civilian authorities. which he eventually did. This is the capital of Freetown. Freetown is not the most glamorous capital in the world, but it is busy, it is live, and every time I go, I have a great time. These are my buddies. The thing, like, over 60% of the population under age 25 years old, right? There are kids everywhere. I've never been the biggest fan of children, but when you go to Sierra Leone, you don't have a choice. And when they know that you're an American, particularly myself, they're Black American. You know, they see us in films, social media, all that. And so I was a hit in my part of town. And these were the kids who stuck to me the closest. They would annoy me, come to my window, do all kinds of things. But I put them on, shout out to them, I adore them. When I went back, unfortunately, they moved and no one knew about their whereabouts. These are my aunties in the market. They belong to the Fulani tribe. The Fulanis are the natural traders of West Africa. And so this is what they do every day. They sell ground up. They like the simple things in life. I buy them some coffee. They give me some ground up. We bought it like that. And we go on about our business. I adore them. This was taking the last trip there in July. All right. So getting a bit into the political science aspect of it all. Sierra Leone as a state. Because what we have to remember here, every nation is created. You know, the United States, France, Sierra Leone, Kenya, it doesn't matter. Every nation is formed out of its history. And so in this particular case, Sierra Leone comes from the Portuguese word, I'm going to butcher this, Sierra Leone, meaning the Lion Mountain. As you get closer to Freetown, the peninsula, there are mountains everywhere. It is a gorgeous country. And so I forgot which explorer it was, but when he first saw it, he said it resembled a lion. So Sierra Leone, after the jostling between the European powers, became a British colony in 1896, and they achieved independence on April 7, 1960. Sierra Leone, the nation. So the state quickly being, you know, the apparatus, the administrative functions that, you know, collects taxes, organizes the army, etc. The nation being the people itself. Again, Sierra Leone is divided between 16 ethnic groups. So, you know, some people would guess that it's kind of hard to find social cohesion among such large groups of people, different peoples, when you're jostling for power over the state apparatus. But in Sierra Leone, what occurred was the APC, the All People's Congress, assuming power following independence, and they held on to power. President Momo was the president when the Sierra Leone Civil War began. Like I said, they live in relative harmony. In Sierra Leone, when I was observing, there was this, I found interesting, this intersection of religion and social economics, because on the one hand, majority Muslim population. On the other hand, over 90% of the people are poor. They live in abject poverty. And so that's not a good recipe for any kind of social or political cohesion. But in the end, the Civil War was not based on religion. The Civil War was not primarily based on ethnicity. It was based on this one political power, party remaining in power. And so when you have, like we're seeing in Burkina Faso, in the Sahel region of Africa today, when you have such large amounts of poverty, groups who come along, insurgents, what have you, they come along, they promise you riches, protection, food to feed your family. It's easy to become wrapped up in something like that. And that's what happened here in Ceylon. But during the Sierra Leone Civil War, you actually had these counter groups who were formed in the villages to protect the village. And they would all defend off the rebels. Government forces were effective at first, but then the rebels started to gain ground. And so as it concluded in the early 2000s, everyone was tired. There was still enough international attention. And finally, civilian authority was restored and the truce was brokered. The Fulani people are the traders of West Africa, as I told you before. And that's important because when it comes to the economics, everyone has their proper ethnicity that they identify with. But it's like, you know who controls almost the money flow, the principal trading activities in the country. and that tends to go to the Lebanese, which is interesting, I'll tell you about later, and the Fulanis. Ethnicity and party politics. So, following independence in 1960, like I told you, the APC. The APC is identified with the Continuity ethnic group. The next big party, the SLPP, Sierra Leone People's Party, they're normally identified with the second largest group, the Mende, who live in the east part of the country. This handsome man right here is Dr. Matt Abio in Sierra Leone. I don't know how to explain it, but I've seen it a lot in developing nations. You know, it's not like these leaders are cult leaders or cult personality. I don't know how I want to call it, but they're everywhere. They're very ubiquitous. And so this is him in Freetown, and in fact, the next elections will be held next year. So that promises to be very interesting. This video, I don't know if it's going to play, but I was there during the last presidential election. And so I get to see party politics and all that stuff in action in a developing nation. And then this was a typical rally. We're going to skip it for right now. We have time to get it, I can show back, come back and show you. But it's basically one of a typical parade. What was special about my town, you had a woman candidate running for a member of parliament, because they're kind of modeled after the British, so they have parliament. Ms. Sunga, she actually came back from the United Kingdom to run for office in Sierra Leone, and so she won. Very interesting person. Quick note on the Creole people. How many of you know about the Creole people of Sierra Leone? So real quickly, the Creole people was basically a group, as you can read, of African Americans, Native Africans, Canadians, Jamaicans from the Caribbean, who were taken back to Africa. And they settled what is now the capital of Freetown, hence the name Freetown. You go to Gabon, there's the capital is called Libreville, in French, Freetown. And so that's what happened here. And why this was special is that Creole, that mix of that beautiful language that is derived from English, Portuguese, French, that is not a lingua franca of Sierra Leone. So while you have 16 different ethnic groups in their own language and customs, nearly 95% of the people speak Creole, thus unifying and strengthening that nation that I told you about earlier. Sierra Leone and popular culture. Who has heard of Blood Diamonds? The movie, right? I hate this movie. I'm sorry, it was beautifully done, true. But what happens in Western culture, you know, you see something on television, and it becomes associated with the people, or country, etc. It doesn't tell the full story. So while in the movie Blood Diamonds across Africa, it was a real thing. The way that they extract the minerals and sold it in blood. The same thing that they're doing in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Cobalt. You have an iPhone, that important mineral is there. The way that they extract these minerals leads to conflicts. And it happened in Sierra Leone. But the reason I hate the film, again, is because now it becomes associated with Mama Salone, and that does not tell the full picture. Resource rich. So in political science jargon, there's something called the resource trap. It's where a country, often developing, they have natural resources that are abundant, that should be able to, in theory, save the country in which it's found. But the issue that we found with developing nations, not just in Africa, is normally a curse. Because when you don't have a state apparatus that's developed enough to dictate the extraction, the selling, the collection of taxes to redistribute among the population, the different rivalries emerge, whether they're ethnic. A lot of places like in the Niger Delta is oil rich. The people down there want to claim first dibs to their oil. But the national authorities who are not from there, no, it's going to come up to the Capitol. We're going to decide to spend it. So the same thing in Sierra Leone. Now they were talking about oil being found off the coast of Sierra Leone, which would be a great thing, because they follow Ghana's model, to an extent Angola. They could appropriately extract it and share the riches. But in Sierra Leone, truth be told, corruption is so endemic to where it's impossible for any redistribution efforts that affects everyone to be done efficiently. This is an actual picture of a diamond found. Please tell me if I keep getting any over. I'm sorry. This was an actual diamond found in Kono in 2017. Over 700 carats. They estimated that that diamond would sell for over $10 million. What happened to it, a pastor found it, because you might have a regular job in Sierra Leone, but you're going to find some hustles like you do here. And so he was mining that day, and he struck. What he had to do, he told the local chief, who he trusted to actually tell national authorities, and he did. They told the president, and they gave the diamond over to the national authorities. And so the fear was when they first found that diamond, was that it was going to cause some kind of conflict. That's a rock that's worth over $10 million, and I'm poor. But luckily, they did the right thing, and he was put in the cut. Now, what happens is they contract Western companies, private companies, to come in as sort of intermediaries to cut it, clean it, polish it. Not my line of work, but I heard it's a lot of work. So I think they did it with the Belgian company. No one knows what happened to the windfall that the government collected, though. That's the issue when it comes to natural resources in developing countries. Sierra Leone is also rich in bauxite, as is neighboring Guinea and other minerals. And again, the population sees very little windfall. Sierra Leone, the state, a libertarian playground. We're all familiar with who a libertarian is, right? What they adhere to, right? They want a society as free as they preach. They can go to Sierra Leone. Education in Sierra Leone. In 2018, when President Bill won, he promised free education for all. Because before, parents had to pay education fees. My first day there as a teacher, the kids who did not have the money, they were marshaled out of class, and they were told to go home and get that money. I'm trying to teach in my broken Creole to kids who barely understand me already, and then here comes the administration getting the kids out of the classroom. But it's gotten better. It's government funded, but because again the state apparatus is not as efficient as it should be, parents are still left to pay. Public services inadequately funded. You know, like garbage collection. What other services do we have here in the United States? Anything that a normal municipality would do, they're supposed to do, it doesn't happen. Because, you know, public servants are not paid what they should be paid. And that's, again, the state apparatus is not as put together as it should be. Abolish the police in Sierra Leone. Let me tell you about this, right? And I'm so glad I traveled abroad to experience the culture and see what goes on. In 2020, when the Abolish the Police movement began, you know, I understand the academic origins of it, defund the police, reroute some of the funding to social services. I understand it. But to actually get rid of the police, you go to Sierra Leone and you have fun with that. Because they are a police force, they have nothing. They don't have patrol cars, they don't have the technology, they don't have the resources to lead investigations and solve crimes, all that stuff. What a police force is supposed to do. I was robbed in Sierra Leone. I'll tell you. They kicked in my door and stole all my technology. I went to the police force, I could have saved my breath. What were they gonna do? And they did nothing, because they couldn't. So I mean, I don't like telling that story. I don't want to blemish Mama Salone, but it's true, you know, they don't have appropriate resources and human capacity, not enough people with the technical expertise to do what these forces should be doing. So again, if you're a libertarian, you want to live in a free society, you know, go smoke weed and don't have to worry about the consequences, all that stuff, go to Sierra Leone. But you'll bear with the consequences if something would happen. So now, between the Gullah Geechee the Gullah Geechee connection. So over 70% of enslaved Africans were taken through the Charleston, or ports in South Carolina, principally Charleston. A good percentage of that came from the region that is the Senegambia and Sierra Leone. Bunce Island was a major departure point. If you have not seen this film, I would highly recommend it. The Language You Crying, produced in 1998, in some it's about this song that was heard down here in South Carolina. And the woman, she died in the 1950s, but it was the song that was in the language of Mende, where I live. And so what they did, they traced back the roots. And so they went all over the eastern part of Sierra Leone, Pujol district. They could find no one who remembered it until they went to this remote village. And this lady was like, I know that song. Because her grandmother used to sing it to her all the time. And so when they discovered that something beautiful was produced, she went to Sierra Leone, she went to the town, she met the lady, and basically that was the catalyst for further exploration of the route between the Mendes of Sierra Leone and the Gullah Geechee. This is the mayor of Freetown. She is a Creole, but again, there goes that connection, because remember the Creole people were a lot of African Americans and Jamaicans, whatnot, who came and went back to Africa. She came to Charleston in 2018, and she met with, is that, well, not mispronounced his name, Mayor Tinkleberg? Further cementing that tie between Sierra Leone and the United States, particularly the Gullah Geechee. One of the biggest things that reminded me of the connection between the two peoples was the food. Rice is a huge staple in Sierra Leone. Also in, some people will say Southern culture, but I know for sure in Gullah Geechee culture, we eat rice almost with every meal. Not good for you, but it's good stuff. So here, you have some of my favorite dishes. On the right there, that is potato leaf. So they take the roots, well, the leaves of, as it sounds like, potato plants, and they grind it up. They add pepper and all kinds of spices, and you get that. Great stuff. What I found interesting, my boss I was telling you about earlier, Tony from Niger, they said, we don't eat that in Niger. He said in Niger, they normally give the roots, the leaves to like animals and whatnot. So I said, hey, it's good to me. I'm just trying to know. That's one of the interesting things that reminds you that Africa is such a diverse place. What's prevalent in one culture will not be in another. And I find it so interesting. Up there, cassava is big. Manioc from French. Cassava is big. What they do, they tend to fry it, and like season the Maggi, put a little hot oil on it, and I will eat mine in the morning with my cup of coffee or Ovaltine or whatnot. Great stuff. And then, front of the corner, what we call black-eyed peas, they call beach. And because it's Africa, they use a bunch of palm oil. I don't know if you all like palm oil, but I think the stuff is wonderful. You gotta eat it in small doses though, but what they do, they take the black-eyed peas, they put cereal on like dry fish. I learned to like dry fish and hot pepper. And that's because, beef is much more expensive to come by, and the Fulanis tend to be the tribe that control all the cattle in the country, that's why. And they get that. Something like in African American culture, we have more of the cabbage, which they do sell in Sierra Leone, but it's not ubiquitous in the provinces. Collard greens, which can grow, anything can grow over there. And so it's like when I found some things in Freetown, take back to my village, like grits. I was on a man hunt for grits ever since I got there. And when I finally found it, I went back to my village as if I brought back gold. And I gave it to my friend Maury, who never had it before. And watching them try it for the first time, it was something magical. Because the Southern Gullah Geechee in me, I was like, this is the kind of cultural connection that we should strive for. So Social stratification in the Black experience, I will not read this to you, but in the United States, in academic circles, there is this distinction between race and ethnicity. Basically, they are social constructs. They do not arise from the ground or from God. They are created and reinforced by man, which is what a lot of what the 2020 social movement was all about trying to explain. But it's here and it exists. In Sierra Leone, every society has to have something that stratifies people. And so over there is more so ethnicity. The problem becomes when both become anchored in social and political institutions. And the same applies for over in Sierra Leone. Now, like I told you, they live in relative harmony. But when you start to look at the machinery in place, who's going to get what when it comes to resources, comes to public funding? And that normally is tied to who's in power. So I told you next year will be the elections. And it's important to watch because Madabiel is of the he's really of the Shibul tribe, but he's aligned as LPP, that's with the Mende people. He's everywhere, and that's because when these people win, the spoil system. Whoever wins gets the government jobs, gets to make decisions. And so now what Sierra Leone already has scarce resources. I believe over 60% of their state budget is funded by donors because they don't have the apparatus to collect taxes. When you have these scarce resources in party politics, it could be explosive. So you see it a lot in Sierra Leone, and what I can never understand, and I still don't understand to an extent, is that everyone's poor. Everyone is poor. But when you have the promise of being delivered something for you and your family, you tend to do what you can. And so it's something sad to watch, particularly when politics on a high level is often dictated by business interests. In the United States, that's so true. In Sierra Leone, it is still true. What's interesting about Sierra Leone, I was telling you earlier, there's a Lebanese minority. These are Lebanese who came from Lebanon, and they installed themselves all throughout Africa. It's not just Sierra Leone. There's a minority in Nigeria, in Kenya, that I know about Tanzania, and they tend to control business flows. They create these monopolies on import and exports. I will go to a store that's owned by Lebanese in the big cities, and they would have the Sierra Leonean follow me around. You see it so many times. My colleagues in the Peace Corps, they all were recounting, and it's really, it's dangerous to pinpoint certain social conditions on certain people. So I'm going to tread lightly here. But what is true is that the money interests tend to dictate politics. So everyone tends to get scrapped. What we also have here, the white savior complex. Mr. Cole, I'm sure you know all about this, right? In decolonized Africa, there still exists this mentality that white is right. And when I have conversations among my colleagues, someone told me, oh, I wish you were a white woman so you could bring some money. I'm like, well, I'm glad you know I ain't got no money. But I assure you, even if one of my white colleagues would have came, you still wasn't gonna gain any money. But there's still this notion that white people have money, particularly Americans, right? I will be truthful and say that I too experienced a certain privilege in Sierra Leone. Why? Because I'm an American, and they tend to associate Americans with money. But what was striking for me was that when I was with my white colleagues, some people would move heaven and earth to do anything for that colleague. My boss, my country director, she was a black woman, Penny. And she told us a story when she first got to Sierra Leone. She was with her assistant, her subordinate, and who was a white woman. So when she gets off the plane, the workers immediately rush to the white woman, thinking that she was the boss, right? And so when she told the story, you know, I knew it was true, but I was like, kind of brushed it off until I began to see it almost in everyday interactions. And it was so crazy, and it's still something that baffles me to this day. And I'm not saying that because, you know, often you have people, they want to enjoy what they don't have. They want to enjoy what they see that, for example, white people may have, right? It's not about that. It's about how, for me, how the perception of how you view the world, how you view this thing called race. And so every day that was just something that struck me. When I would walk up by myself, I was fine. People would think I was Nigerian until I opened my mouth and they realized, oh, I was an American. True story. My students thought for sure that I had a briefcase full of American dollars in my house, which probably contributed to my door getting kicked in. But I had to keep reminding them constantly, we are here to collaborate and serve alongside you all. Why would you think we're going to bring a bunch of money and keep in my house that's not secured, and I live next to a bush? You know? It was annoying, but it was just something that came along with the territory. So again, observations on economic distribution. Again, most of the wealth is controlled by the political elite, really by the minority of the Lebanese, and by the Fulani people. True story, I went to a bank in Freetown, group of Fulani men, full of men, counting about tens of thousands of dollars. $100 Ben Franklins. And here I am, the American, like, can I get $1 or something? I mean, it was insane. I say that to say that the economic inequality that exists in developing countries should be discussed more. I will never forget this story. It's the annual meeting of economic meeting of the world. Is it Davos?
Yeah.
Davos. And so in the story, there was like, you had rich countries there, you had poor countries there. But in reality, you had the upper echelons of every country there. The people who control the wealth, who have the business interests, et cetera, et cetera. And so once you really dive into developing country politics and economics, you realize that it's something harrowing to actually watch in action. It's something sad. Just like the vaccine distribution, when you get the vaccines to these developing countries, who's going to get it first? The upper echelons, those who have the money. And then they trickle down to the rest of the population. This map was published by the Federal Reserve, because we were talking about, you know, the distinction and socioeconomics when you're black. This is the actual wage gap in the United States. Excuse me, wealth gap in the United States. That purple line being white wealth, and blacks and Hispanics on the bottom, you know. So that's why I was saying when it comes to political science term, race, ethnicity, and then you have economics and politics. These are man-made structures and constructs that are reinforced in political and social structures, even in the United States. As we don't, it's a different conversation to have. But if we're going to talk about it in developing countries, you need to talk about it at home first, because both of them actually do exist. This picture, of course you know myself, but this is a microcosm of the diaspora that was in Sierra Leone. So you have 1, 2, 3 African Americans. You have Darren with the dress, who is Jamaican, and then Afusa and Anna, they're Nigerians, right? But all of us shared a common characteristic, which was that we were white in their eyes. And so I brought this picture up because it's something that we laugh about today, but it annoyed us when we were there. Because again, because we lived in the West, we were associated with riches, advancement, all that. Not knowing our individual stories and histories and where we came from. And so, you know, when we were with our white colleagues, the word for white man in Timney was poto. And in midday it was pumi. And when we would be out with our white colleagues, we would get called it. Because we are such staunch Pan-Africanists, those who believe in the unification or the strength of the black diaspora, whether in Africa, the Caribbean, or Europe. It touched us because never before had I been reminded so much that I was an American. Living when you're home, you're in your bubble. You don't know what other people think about you. But when I was in Sierra Leone, it was the first time I was constantly reminded that I was indeed an American. And like I said earlier, I possess certain privileges as an American. So it's like, we talk about privilege, white privilege, what have you, but in different contexts, everyone has some kind of privilege. And it's how you deal with it. You don't flaunt it, you don't use it for your advantage, or you use it to aid someone. How you deal with that privilege is what I learned. And so as an American, I always, I tend to ask myself now, what can I do to further collaborate with my sisters and brothers in Sierra Leone? Because it is true that we Americans enjoy some kind of economic advantage, access to better education, for one thing. It's just a reality. Real quick, in Sierra Leone, there's this campaign, Hands Off Our Girls, that's championed by the First Lady, Fatima Malavio. Because in Sierra Leone, the problem is that female genital mutilation is a real thing. It is a real thing. When these young ladies are initiated in these secret societies, they often go through that process. And so recently, last year, or the year before, the national government wanted to launch a real campaign to put it to an end. But the thing is, again, when it comes to the national government, they lack the capacity to do anything, to be effective. The thing that made Europe so easy to conquer was that it was flat. Lowlands, you can march across fields. In Sierra Leone, you're not going to march easily across jungles and bush. So when you're stationed in Freetown, it's a centralized system, and you don't have the money to pay people to do what you want them to do, and you don't have the manpower to do it. There's but so much you can do when it comes to campaigns like this, besides try to sensitize people on the dangers of female genital mutilation. When in Sierra Leone, you see a bunch of billboards like these, with talking about HIV, breastfeeding, which I was struck by when I first got there, because it's something you don't see a lot in public here. The billboards are everywhere, because that's really the most effective way they have to sensitize, educate populations about certain critical issues. And so lastly, I just want to tell people, vacation in Sierra Leone, in Mama Salone. I don't know what you're thinking about this presentation. I hope I did not show too much of the bad about the country, because again, Sierra Leone is one of those places where, yes, there's abject poverty, but a lot of places like in the Philippines or Indonesia, who are developing much more rapidly than Sierra Leone, they are destination spots because they have beautiful beaches, they're developing their tourism industry, and the same thing is true about Sierra Leone. These are actual pictures. The one on this one here is Bure Beach. Bure Beach is a popular spot for expats. I've never been there, but it is gorgeous. I went to that beach, it's called Number 2 Beach. It's about $5 to enter, because they want to keep it up. They don't want just anyone there, and they got to generate some money. But it was gorgeous. So picture this. You go to Sierra Leone, you go to Freetown, you will experience, what is Sierra Leonean culture on the streets just like that. The hustle and bustle. But then again, you have to escape to the beaches. They have nice hotels. They will certainly accommodate you. And truth be told, because you're white, you will be treated like kings and queens. But besides that aspect, I just want people to explore Mama Salone, because she has an interesting history. She has generous people, loving people, and the food is top notch, I am trying to tell you. So that's all from me. Again, I thank you all for you coming out and listening to some young guy talk about this exotic place in the world. But I truly do appreciate it. Thank you so much. I want y'all to see all this rain that's coming. And if I don't get back to town, I'm gonna be drenched. Oh, boy. This is beautiful. Waccamaw. I spent nearly 2 years of my life. Across the way, that's where the priest resides. Father Kimmel. I've been told he's now left. He's back in his native Kono. So maybe once I get to Kono, I can see him. Wait till y'all see my little village. So I'm back in Waccamaw at one of my favorite cookeries. I pulled out the camera to. Sadiki, you speak English. Tell me your name.